Hi, everybody. Dionne Major here, CEO of Inside Sales by Design, with our podcast for this week, Universal Sales Truths. We are going to change up the format a little bit and share with you some content that I had created previously. And we're talking about the 10 irrefutable laws for sales professionals. So make sure you are ready to listen, and I would maybe want to revisit some of this conversation too. There's a lot of ground we're going to be covering today. So when we think about being a sales professional, number one is the question I have for you is, do you think you're a professional, right? So many people, quote unquote, fall into sales that sometimes our mindset is we're accidentally successful and in sales versus being proactive with it and being a professional. So what you can see here are the top 10 for those of you that are listening. The top one that we're going to talk about is treating it as a profession. And so all the way to owning your professional path. What's your why? Communicate and collaborate, which we actually talk about twice. That's number 4 and number 10. We talk about one-on-ones, skill development, day in the life, reflect, and know your numbers. So we're going to cover off on all of that. I know, again, I am not always a big fan of reading things out loud. However, for those of you that are listening while you're driving or out for a walk or whatever the case may be, wanted to give you that information. So let's dive right in. When we think about being a sales professional, I touched on it previously, treat it as a profession. What does that mean? That means that we are engaged in continually improving ourselves as a professional. So the analogy I frequently use is, if you were going to go to a doctor, would you want to go to a doctor that graduated in 1980 and has not taken any continuing education classes, read a business journal, or done anything to improve his or her knowledge since graduating in 1980? My guess is probably not. So for us as sales professionals, it's really about what are we doing to continually hone our craft and treating it as a profession. Keep in mind, I say this and I'll say it again, as far as how we think determines how we feel, which determines our actions. So if we think we're not a professional, we're going to feel a little wishy-washy, and our actions aren't going to reflect a continual improvement, high standard. So in your head, treat being a salesperson as being a sales professional, which will determine how you feel. It will drive confidence, which will then in turn drive you to seek out ways to improve. So what do you think makes a professional? How do you need to potentially think differently about being a sales professional? What do you need to do today to improve your game? Is it your attitude? Is it your mind? Is it your books? Reading books, listening to podcasts? Do you need to revisit your internal sales and product training? Do you need to revisit your messaging to be more other-centered, to be more value-based? Hey, here's what we can do for you versus look at how cool we are. So in all of these things that we're going to talk about, there's a next steps and a reflect and do. We don't necessarily want to consume content without action to take. So as we're going through some of these pieces, we want to be able to think through, as a sales professional, what do you think makes a sales professional? How do you need to think differently potentially? How are you improving your game day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year? And then put it on your calendar and make it happen. So our next piece, what we're talking about, is owning your professional path. There's a fine line between, I want to go work for a company that has a defined career path and I can make my own way. There's typically a combination of both. For us as a professional, we need to take ownership of our own professional path. So if you're a sales professional, do you want to stay in the BDR world? Do you want to go to account manager? What type of account manager? Account executive, small mid-market enterprise? Where do you fit? Where do you think you fit? Do you want to be able to teach? Do you want to be able to mentor? Do you want to do in-person? Do you want to do SaaS demos? Do you want to be able to be a manager at some point? So all of those components, when we think about it, is how do you own your professional path? Are you engaged with others to find answers to those questions, to have discernment around what that path looks like? Because it's easy for us to sit back and say, well, nobody told me what to do. Sure. And that is a great mindset to have if you are a passenger on a plane and there's a crisis. Yes, there's an evacuation plan and you will be told what to do. That's not what this is. We are professionals, and it is up to us to own our professional path. So whether we want to stay in sales, we want to do something else, whatever that looks like, we should always be seeking knowledge. And then to help us reflect on what we want to do, we would think about, what are we good at as a salesperson? What about your approach resonates with your buyers? What do people like about your approach as a sales professional? What do you want to do next? And I would say that sometimes it's not about advancing. Sometimes it's about doubling down and mastering your craft as a salesperson, as a sales leader, whatever the case may be. So really reflect on some of these things. And I love the phrase iron sharpens irons. And that's the thing is, we can't soar with the eagles if we're stuck down with the turkeys, right? So we are the company we keep. As we are looking to determine our career path, seek out quality, surround yourself with excellence and excellent people, right? There's the phrase out there that talks about surrounding yourself with people that scare you, like, man alive, could I do what that person is doing, right? We're not going to compare necessarily from a personal perspective, but we're going to compare from what I see that person doing, the activities, right? Can I do that? Be a student of your craft. Engage with others, participate in groups, find a coach, right? Find a tribe, a team. And there's a difference between a team and a club. A club exists to make everybody comfortable. Right? We go to a club and it's fun, it's exciting, it's very comfortable. A team, if any of you have ever been on a truly a quality team, we exist to make each other better. We're giving each other feedback. We're talking about, hey, you might want to try this, you might want to try that. That was really good, that was really bad. All of that is okay. And we're not going to take that personally. We're going to take that as, here's what I can do to hone my craft as a sales professional. All right, number 3, let's dive into our why. If you haven't crafted a personal professional mission statement or purpose statement, I highly recommend that. I'm actually more a fan of purpose statements than I am a mission or vision statement. So what is your personal professional purpose statement? I'll share with you, mine is to make the world a better place, one inside sales team and one inside sales professional at a time. Craft an annual plan for yourself. It might change, but have a plan, revisit it, create a vision board, right? What do you want your life to look like? And are there pieces where you're giving back and honing your craft? And like we talked about, as a sales professional, why do customers buy from you? Why do people enjoy interacting with you? And pressing into that. And really, as a colleague of mine calls it, tripling down on those pieces. At the bottom here on this slide, you're going to see a little bit of a fill in the blank, if you will, or a Mad Lib to kind of jumpstart you in creating your personal professional purpose statement. I believe in and do this by and serve others how. So hopefully that helps. kind of get you jump started on a purpose statement for yourself. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? Why are you good at what you do? What's going to keep the fire ignited for you to keep going, to treat yourself as a sales professional, to continually hone your craft? And in here too, there's an example of an annual plan. It's the step one that you're going to take a look at. So for those of you that are driving, you're going to want to go ahead and potentially look at the slide deck itself. And there's an example here, or you can reach out to me directly for it. And then of course, step two, and then our third step of the annual plan is being able to take step one and step two and put it down into actionable items quarter over quarter. So now we're moving on to number 4, which is communicate and collaborate. So at this point, we've decided that we are a sales professional. We're treating it as a profession. We have determined our professional path, at least what we know to be true as of today, what we like today, who we are, how we are, all that good stuff, where we're at in our life. We've talked about our why. And now we're talking about communicating and collaborating. I'm a huge fan of words. And what I want to call out here is both communicate and collaborate are verbs. And sometimes what happens is we think communication is this very passive thing. We think collaborating is this very passive thing, right? A passive thing is a noun. A passive thing is a couch. When we are choosing to engage and communicate and collaborate, there is a life. Those words are verbs. That means there's an action associated with it. We're going to communicate in order to do something amazing, right? Communicate is to convey knowledge. And so when we're thinking about being a sales professional, are we communicating? Are we conveying knowledge? Are we educating? Are we revealing by clear signs what it is we're trying to do? And then collaborate is really to work jointly together in an intellectual endeavor. Wow. So now when we think about being a sales professional and some of our top 10 rules of irrefutable laws as a sales professional is communicate and collaborate is our verbs. We are actively engaged in conveying knowledge, working jointly together in an intellectual endeavor. So I hope that helps give a little bit of perspective on communicating and collaborating and what it means to do that well. And it might also kind of trigger back to what's your why? What's your professional career path, right? How do you communicate? Are you an effective communicator? If you are, what part of that is good, right? Collaboration. What is the value that you bring to the proverbial table in an intellectual endeavor? And that will help kind of shape and clarify all of these pieces together. So let's talk about one-on-ones. So for those of us that used to think one-on-ones, our manager would drive it and all that good stuff, I got news for you. One-on-ones are for the employee. It's our time. And so we want to be able to use our time effectively. It's not to say that your leadership shouldn't have an agenda of some sort. However, a lot of times, again, we're kind of back to collaboration. So one-on-ones are the epitome of communicating and collaborating. We, as a sales professional, want to come with questions. We want to come with examples. We want to come seeking guidance. We're kind of back to our professional career path, right? We're owning our professional path of always be seeking knowledge. We want to be able to do our homework. If we know our boss is going to ask about pipeline and forecast and deals and what's next and so on and so forth, we want to come prepared with that so we can have this time, our one-on-one time, be super effective, and you can go out and get after it and do what you need to do to be successful. So those are some little tidbits on a one-on-one. So many times we see people come into a one-on-one and they just kind of sit back and have some popcorn ready and they're waiting for their boss to kind of lead them through an agenda. No. Come with your own agenda. Get what you want out of that meeting. Hopefully your leadership has some skills and knowledge that you can partake of right? That you can go back to your clients with. That's the purpose of a one-on-one. All right, let's dive into skill development. We talked earlier about being a professional and our career path and honing our skills. And so for those of us maybe who are or aren't, quite frankly, in an organization that has an identified training program, skill development, call it what you will, make your own. If you are truly a professional and seeking knowledge, then figure out what skill a month you want to work on, right? It kind of goes back to one-on-ones and communicating and collaborating and what's your why. So what are you good at? What might you need to focus on a little bit to not completely nosedive from? Is there a skill that's just dragging you down, right? Is it time management? Is it creating process for yourself? Is it your messaging? Is it how do I hold a conversation? Is it communication? Is it closing? Whatever the case may be. There's so much information out on the internet. Find a trusted source and figure out, maybe I'm really good at opening the call. Great. Focus on that, triple down on that, get to a point where you've got your skill set around that particular skill locked and loaded, and you always get it right. Then is there a piece maybe that is a little weak for you where you can develop your own talk tracks, right? What is your closing process? Because maybe it's hard for you for whatever reason. As an example, what is your process, right? And then once you have the process dialed in, then you can start walking through and talking about, okay, how do I kind of finesse this skill? As a sales professional, though, that is one question I always ask is, what skill are you working on right now? Sometimes people have an answer, sometimes people don't. So it's always good to know, what are you working on at the end of the day? Day in the life. So many times we'll say, hey, let's do some time blocking. What's on your agenda for today? What are we doing? How are we doing it? And unfortunately, a lot of times we let our day happen to us. I can't really commit to call blocks or client outreach because I might get an email. I hope everybody hears how kind of crazy and absurd that sounds. Plan your work and work your plan. And oh, by the way, email is just an electronic form of correspondence, right? And so it'd be the similarity of waiting for an email. I can't do call blocks because I have to wait for an email is the equivalent of walking out to your mailbox every 10 minutes. It's silly. We wouldn't do that. It's the same thing with email. So when we are thinking about our day in the life, we should have certain non-negotiables on our calendar. Outbound calling, prospecting, LinkedIn, digital sales, responding to email, participating in internal conversations. There should be your list of non-negotiables that have to happen every day. And then, of course, we want to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility in our schedule for the things that do come up. Maybe we're making outbound phone calls, or maybe we're on a call with a client and it goes longer. We definitely want to have some wiggle room in our calendar. However, the non-negotiables are just that, non-negotiables that must be done every day. So when we think about it, you know what? We all have 168 hours a week. That's it. That is the great equalizer right there. We cannot manufacture more time. So every day, ask yourself, what are your top 3 goals for the week? And maybe you can have more than that. That's great. What are your top goals for the week? You're going to find a sweet spot for yourself. What are your top 3 activities to get done every day? If you're on the account manager side, maybe it's generating proposals. Maybe it's circling back to people, whatever the case may be. But really identify what are those top 3 to 5 activities and goals, and how do you block out time to get it done, and then make sure you're staying true to it. I promise you, as you start doing these things, you will find that your time actually does increase because you're actually focusing more and getting the big things done that need to get done to move you as a professional. Again, for those of you that are driving, if you get a chance, I would head over to this blog post as well. There's a visual example of a super simple worksheet that talks about month, week, and day. What are my top 3 things and how do I get there? And then, of course, you want to focus on the strategic and then tactical activities. So if there's an overarching goal to generate 15 proposals this month, what does that look like, right? Or listen to X amount of podcasts, or create new messaging for myself around a new product offering or new product or service that your company has. How do you go about doing that? And what does a final result look like? And then we come to the piece that a lot of us forget, which is reflect, focusing on the what. So being able to have a plan and move forward, as you can probably hear, I'm a huge fan of forward momentum and planning and moving and grooving and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is we don't give ourselves time to pause and reflect. And did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? So maybe you give yourself a monthly kickoff. And you say, here's September 1st. By the end of September, here's where I'd like to be. So it's kind of back to reflecting, or the day in the life of what are my monthly goals? What are my weekly goals? What are my daily goals? And so here you're seeing a checklist that talks about scheduling time with yourself and walking through what were your goals. Did you hit them? What worked? What didn't? What took you off track? What do you need to do the same? What do you need to do different? Course correct, right? So many times we don't give ourselves the luxury and the gift of reflecting. And we want to make sure we do that, because that's really how we get better. It's like watching your own game film, right? So, and for those of you that are athletes on the call, we've all been there. We've all had to watch game film, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's embarrassing. And sometimes it's like, holy bananas, I got to get back to the gym. So it is what it is. And this is, again, if we are treating ourselves as professional, this is what we do in order to make sure we are improving our craft. Number 9, know your numbers. I can't tell you how many times or how many organizations don't have KPIs or numbers in place or goals. Maybe it's not a number, it's a goal. You got to have a goal. How do you know if you're successful? So whether it's an NPS score, whether it's happy customers, whatever the case may be, it doesn't have to be a quota, it doesn't have to be activity numbers, but man alive, we got to know, what does success look like? And 9 times out of 10 in the sales professional world, that is a number. We're here to generate revenue. We're here to talk to customers. We're here to create relationships. So it's okay. We have to know our numbers. So I'm dating myself very, very much right now. But for those of you that are seeing this, back in the day, and there was a Tootsie Roll Pop commercial, and I still love Tootsie Roll lollipops, that was saying, Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop? We must know our stats, because what happens is we're going to start a sales campaign and all of a sudden everybody's got dollars for eyeballs and they're going to go, great, we're calling 1,000 people. We expect 1,000 responses. Da, 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 da. That's not how that works. And we all know that. So, but we must know our numbers. How many attempts does it take to get somebody on the phone? How many calls does it take to craft a good proposal? How many calls does it take to get a signature? How many calls does it take to implement or have the implementation call? What does it look like to generate a renewal? It is sales, and communication as a verb is a math problem. The art of that comes in when we are reaching out to our customers, right? We have to know, what is our outbound or our communication strategy? How many times do we need to call, email, LinkedIn, video message, whatever the case may be, before we see progress in the areas we need to see progress in? We must know what works to be successful. And in 2021, there are enough tools out there, whether you're using a sales acceleration platform or Excel, to be able to dive into the numbers. So we definitely want to know what those look like. All right, everybody. we're going to do number 10 again, and we're going to repeat. So communicate and collaborate. Cannot stress this enough. Communicate and collaborate are verbs. That means there's action associated, which means, yep, we're going to lay out a plan, we're going to lay out a process, and then we're going to move and execute against whatever it is we just communicated, the knowledge we're sharing, right? The working jointly on something. There's always a way to move forward. And for us as sales professionals, we own the driving of the sales process. Now, I'm not saying that we have to have all the answers. What I am saying is we drive the process. We drive the conversation. Sometimes that's asking questions. Sometimes that's being a really great facilitator. Sometimes that's asking questions and overcoming objections or trying to get to the bottom of something with our prospects, with our team, with our internal team, with our product team. It doesn't matter. It's all about communicate and collaborate in order to fill in the blank. So again, can't stress it enough. Communicating and collaborating are verbs. They imply action. That means there's something to do at the end of the day. So there you have it, everybody. The top 10 irrefutable laws for sales professionals. We definitely covered a lot of ground on this podcast. I hope there were some gems and nuggets that you all took away. I'm a huge fan for those that are looking for it of the AAISP. It's the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. And read. Readers are leaders and leaders read. So whether you're reading a book, you're doing a podcast, or doing the audio version of a book, there are top sales books. There's like 90,000 plus results on Amazon. So no reason not to. Ask a friend, form a book club, get after it in whatever way you need to. And again, thank you so much for joining today on the Universal Sales Truths podcast. What's next is, and for those of you that we've talked before, you're going to know what's next for you. What are your next steps? Out of these top laws, top 10, we'll say 9 because there was a duplicate. What are your next steps? Do you want to write your personal professional purpose statement? Do you want to work on your skill development? Whatever that is, pick one thing and start. Put it on your calendar. How do you know you're successful? Right? So definitely consider those things. So for example, if you are going to write a personal professional purpose statement, put it on your calendar. I encourage you to share it with a friend. And then maybe how do you know you're successful? Put it on your LinkedIn profile. Share it with your team. Where does it go? What does it do? How are you going to use this information? How are you going to walk it out? So make sure you're executing against some of the topics we covered today. And as always, thank you so much for joining the Universal Sales Truth podcast. I'm Dionne Major, CEO of Inside Sales by Design. I hope you found this helpful and useful and took away some nuggets. Make sure you are subscribing to our podcast so you get alerted to all the new episodes that come out. And I hope everybody has an amazing rest of their day. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Universal Sales Truth podcast. Please make sure that you subscribe to our podcast so you're notified of updates. You can also find this content on the Inside Sales by Design YouTube channel. So make sure you take a look at that. It'll also be in the salesclass.ai platform for you and your teams. And please make sure to reach out and connect with myself and the speaker you heard today individually. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And contact us if there's anything you specifically want to hear or know about. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.